George's affectionate eulogy for John Lennon all those years ago. During the early part of the 80s, George's profile in the music business sank below the horizon. When his 1982 album Gone Troppo was released, he hinted that it might be his last. In addition to his duties at Handmade Films, he devoted himself to nurturing the extensive gardens surrounding Friar Park, his Gothic mansion near Henley-on-Thames. And there was his impressive collection of fast cars to keep him amused, as Gary Moore and Michael Palin remember.
He had some really funny cars. He got one of those rocket cars. Do you remember they brought this thing out called the Rocket, which was like an old style, like Formula One car. It was like a little cigar shaped, like a racing car, but you could drive it on the road. This was the difference. And it would go like 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds or something, really, really fast. So you could get two people in it, but one would sit behind the other. Now, I never went in this car because I know people who did. And he told me, he says, anyone that's ever gone in that car with me would never go on it again. He scared the life out of everybody. And he used to drive around Henley. You'd see him with the leather helmet and the goggles on, man, so no one would know who it was.
He always had about 10 very fast cars, the very latest sort of Mercedes, and always black. And he'd say, do you want to go out? This is great, it's 125. And all the roads around Henley are incredibly winding. They're real English country lanes. I remember sitting in this car when we were going out, only from Henley to Marlow, and he would roar around a corner, this great surge of sort of full throttle, and then there'd be some old lady slowly going along, and George would get, he wasn't uncharitably close to her, but he'd just wait, and then suddenly, when there was a brief gap of maybe about sort of 17 yards, and he'd virtually go over the top of them, roar through, and then off he'd go again. So we went from Henley to Marlow in a series of very short, sharp spurts of speed. Absolutely terrifying, I tell you.
A journey to Marlow would often be for some fun at the house of ex-Traffic member Jim Capaldi.
We immediately developed this word play, like who gave Roberta flack, was Marvin Gaye, was John Mellencamp, what, he just went on like that, and he loved that. So, he would, his last few things he emailed me was who gave Cecil B. DeMille and what was William Holden, And he just, we immediately clicked on that level of humor. And I had this character that we developed, because he had this mask in the house of an old piratey, desperate Dan type of looking face. You put it over your head and it was just complete with a patch on the eye and the chin all stubbled and bald, And then for some reason in the bathroom, I don't know how it happened, but in French for dandruff it's called les pellicules. Les pellicules, like L-E-S, les pellicules. And he just said, yes, you're Les Pellicules. So I became Les Pellicules. That's my secret name, With this kind of old sea pirately kind of thing, a mask on my head. So then we took it a few stages further, put like a cloth cap on my head, scarf around my neck and a raincoat, with a ukulele in my hand. And he'd gotten viciously into the ukulele. And when George gets into something, he really gets into it, So he went and joined the George Formby Appreciation Society in Blackpool. And he'd have movies, and then he'd get all these beautiful ukuleles and renovated, and he'd buy different ones. And Joe Brown had introduced him to the ukulele. Joe's local, And they're obviously good old mates as well. There's a lot of friends in the area. There's a whole group of us, So he'd always serenade you to the door with the ukulele,
Well, I don't think anyone who's been to George's house has ever escaped the ukulele and the George Formby routine.
But in 1987, George laid down his ukulele, picked up his electric guitar, and decided to be a pop star again.
I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you. Got my mind set on you. But it's gonna take money, a whole lot of spending money. It's gonna take plenty of money to do it right, child. It's gonna take time, whole lot of precious time. It's gonna take patience and time to do it, 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 to do it right.
An American #1, Got My Mind Set on You launched Cloud 9, the most successful George Harrison album since All Things Must Pass. For his first record in 5 years, George had hooked up with former Electric Light Orchestra frontman Jeff Lynne.
When he asked me to work with him, it was like the highest thing I could ever know in my life, to get to know him and be his pal and hang out with him and go on trips to various motor racing events. I don't know, he just showed me another side of life that I would never have known about, you know. And from working with George on his album Cloud 9, he gave me a brand new career as just a producer and songwriter for lots and lots of other people wanted me to work with him after I'd worked with George. And so I have to thank George for that. I owe him a lot for that.
I thought, well, I don't want somebody who's going to boss me about and turn me into something I'm not. I want somebody who has a bit of respect for me and for my past. And at the same time, I want to respect him too. And it worked out great. And there's certain sounds and music which I like, and there's certain things I can't stand. There's a lot of clatter going on. We call it clattering and banging that's been going on musically. There's little machines people use now. Jeff Lynne's been using it back in the 70s with taste, you know, a thing called the AMS. Nowadays, everything's got it. Even every TV commercial, you know, it's like, you know, all the drummers are all, you know, computers all going dum 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 dum. You know, it's like that. And everybody and all the snare drums on these machines all sound the same. You know, it's like a clatter with all these MIDI keyboards that have 190 sounds on them and they all sound crap. And I just got to the point where I think, I hate all that stuff. I hate it. And if I have to do that to make a record, I'll never make a record again. And when I met Jeff and I said, but I tell you one thing though, I hate all that crap. And he says, oh good, I hate that too.
The microscopes that magnified the tears studied once and I'm still alive. Long time ago when we was fat, but it's all over now, baby blue. Long time ago when we was fat.
Within a year of Cloud 9's release, George and Jeff Lynne were heard on an album by the Travelling Wilburys, an unlikely supergroup that also included Roy Orbison, Tom Petty and Bob Dylan. Collaborating with Dylan was something George had long wanted to do, as he explained in this 1974 interview.
You know, I'm really ready with John Lennon and Bob Dylan and Lord Buckley and Lenny Bruce and Lord Krishna and Jesus Christ, and let's get us all together into it.
The five Travelling Wilburys came together in Los Angeles by a mixture of mutual admiration and serendipity, as Tom Petty remembers.
A lot of mystical things went on around that time. There were a lot of just mystical things because I was out and I went into a restaurant that I hardly ever go into. And I went in there to eat, and then I ran into Jeff and George in the restaurant. And they were just telling me recently that George was just asking Jeff for my phone number when I walked into the room. So there were a lot of just strange coincidences, I guess. I think the one thing I remember is just there was never a negative moment doing that. We really enjoyed that. I think we made that record for us, really, because we'd all sit on the floor in a circle and write the songs, then we'd go cut the track, then we'd have dinner and work on the lyrics over dinner, and then we'd go do the vocals, and bang, we just enjoyed it.
Being beat up and battered around, being sent up and I've been shut down. You're the best thing that I've ever found. Handle me with care. Reputation's changeable, situation's tolerable, but baby you're adorable. got somebody to lean on. Put your body next to mine and dream on. I've been fucked up and I've been fooled. I've been robbed and ridiculed in daycare centers and night schools. Handle me with care.
The arrival of the Wilburys was like a breath of fresh air, because it was certainly different from the climate of the charts in the late 80s. In fact, it was almost skiffle. It was almost a throwback to George's sort of skiffle past, if you like. It was like a sort of Viking longship docking in a hovercraft terminal.
In late 1990, when the Travelling Wilburys released their second record, Chord of Course Volume 3, it was George's third album in 3 years. But after this prolific period, the rest of the decade brought nothing new from George. Apart from a series of historical projects, including the series of Beatles anthology albums, TV programmes and a weighty book, he resumed a low profile. Then, during Christmas 1999, George became headline news in the most distressing way, when a deranged intruder broke into Friar Park and attempted to murder him. Typically, he quipped from his hospital bed that his attacker certainly wasn't auditioning for the Travelling Wilburys, but having already suffered from cancer, this barbaric act was a devastating blow to George's health. Michael Palin.
I saw him afterwards, a few days afterwards, and he looked very weak as a result of the attack. And he had had some treatment before that anyway, so he's not actually physically in great shape. And the fact that someone's so vulnerable and be able to sort of fight someone off, albeit with Olivia's help, obviously taken an awful lot out of him. But I felt it was a turning point in his health, really. And I think when your health's a little bit dodgy, perhaps as it was at that time, that physically and mentally just slowed down any recovery process. And he's perhaps just a bit more vulnerable to whatever might happen after that.
During the next summer, Peter Sissons, a school friend from the Liverpool Institute, was surprised to bump into George at the Hampton Court Flower Show.
He recognised me, I didn't recognise him. He looked old and unwell, with a denim pork pie hat, and we sat underneath a tree and he told me the whole story, and it was one of the most horrific tales I think I've ever heard, because they woke in the middle of the night to find this guy determined to kill George, and for 20 minutes, it was, can you imagine 20 minutes? 20 minutes is the length of the major news bulletin. They fought for their lives, both of them, hit him with everything, candlesticks, anything hard, then bash him around the head, and he still managed to stab George 9 times, one of the stab wounds within a whisker of a main artery. And George said the police told him subsequently that when they had his assailant under control and in the van taking him away, the only question he wanted answered was, did I kill him? I did kill him, didn't I? I did kill him. There was no question of him coming to frighten George, he'd come to kill him. And I think that for someone as serene and as peace-loving as George Harrison, it was a moment not only of huge shock and horror, but of total incomprehension that someone could want to do it to him.
You can take a horse to the waterbird. He can make it drink. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. A friend of mine in so much misery. Some people sail through life, he has struck a reef.
Recorded with the Jules Holland Rhythm and Blues Orchestra, Horse to the Water was the final song George released in his lifetime. He died in Los Angeles on the 29th of November 2001 with his wife Olivia and son Dhani by his side. One of his closest friends, Ravi Shankar, visited George the day before he passed away.
Of course, we didn't talk or anything, but we held hands, and he seemed to be, he was smiling, and he looks very happy in those few minutes that we were spending together. I have always said, George to me is all combined in one, like a son, like a friend, like a brother, everything. And I loved him so much, and I miss him so very much I cannot express.
While the world mourns the loss of the youngest Beatle at the age of 58, his friends find solace in their memories of George.
George was always interested in something. I never ever remember a day when I sat with George and he had nothing to say, or he'd lost his energy. It would always be something. He'd be jumping up. I've got to show you this, or listen to that. Hey, come upstairs, something terrific. There would be this great energy there. I always remember that about George, right up to the last time I saw him, which was only a few months before he died. And he was playing Hoagie Carmichael tracks to me, and Ray Cooper had been to see him, and we were sort of upstairs in the house he was renting at the time. And we'd all been told to take it easy with him because he's not that strong and he's just recovering. And in the end, we were the ones saying, OK, George, we're a bit tired now. I've had a long flight out here. We'd better go. Oh, one more. Just one more. Listen to this. This is fantastic. So, the great enthusiasms.
He was a passionate gardener, and he seemed to know the name of every single plant in the garden. He just loved them. He loved trees. He loved plants. And I think that's a sign of a really nice person, to take so much care over a garden. He was just great, George.
He had lovely touches. I'd leave late at night after some whatever in the studio. It'd be quite late, and he'd always walk me to the front door, up at Friar Park. He'd be at the archway, this incredible house, And there's a switch on the wall that didn't do anything. It was just a switch, and I'd say, later, okay, see you tomorrow. And he'd switch this switch, and he'd say, just switching off the moon, as he walked back in.
I look at you all, see the lover that's sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. I look at the floor and I see it needs sweeping. Still my guitar gently weeps.
George Harrison,